In the last couple of days, I've seen some polling which suggested Joe Biden, his approval in terms of foreign policy has now fallen. It reflects his broader lack of popularity right now. What's behind the president's poor polling?
Yeah, it's interesting, Kieran. Look, we've got to distinguish one thing. One bad poll does not, but that Ipsos number on screen, I think, is a little closer to the mark in terms of if you could average over the polls. There was a Quinnipiac at 33 that certainly got tongues wagging. 43 is a little bit closer to the par score. But the point of that, Kieran, is that puts him around about where Donald Trump was at the same time in Trump's presidency. And at that time, we were remarking, boy, this makes Trump the most unpopular president since we've been measuring presidential popularity. Biden is giving Trump a real run for his money. And Kieran, you asked why. I think it really begins in my mind and goes back to my earlier answer to your question about Ukraine. It begins with the Afghanistan pullout. I thought that was an extraordinarily, poor moment for Biden politically. I think it was probably the right decision. The execution, of course, another thing. And the opprobrium that Biden took on from right across the US political spectrum in response to that announcement. No one liked those images on TV. And then COVID has persisted. Biden was meant to be back to normal. The US is anything but back to normal. It has experienced, record numbers of deaths again from COVID. Just about everywhere in the world is at the moment, and the developed world is at the moment. But then later on top of that is the supply chain issues and inflation. And there's just a lot of bad news in the ether, as it were, confronting Joe Biden, a president who was supposed to be a return to normalcy. It seemed anything but that. And now, of course, we're now closer to the midterm elections than we were heading into the Christmas break. And Congress's ability to advance the Biden agenda is now ever more compromised. And of course, that press conference last week, Kieran, where Biden said he's going to have to unpick his Build Back Better initiative and see what they can get through piecemeal. Sort of, I think, an acknowledgement of the incredible headwinds Biden's facing domestically at the moment.
So on those headwinds, how are the Republicans shaping up ahead of the midterms in November? And what for Donald Trump? What are the implications for him and the likelihood that he runs again?
Well, right now, I think every indication is that Trump will run again. Trump still owns the Republican Party, or at least that hypothesis is assumed to be so true that no one really wants to test it. And indeed, Trump, a nice little backhand to Governor DeSantis of Florida, someone who's openly toying with a presidential bid himself. Trump calling out DeSantis, not by name, but as one of a number of hypocritical politicians who are talking down vaccines and boosters, whereas Trump himself, I think, has crossed that bridge. Says something about where the Republican Party is at the moment. I think Trump is so confident that he's got the nomination in the bag if he wants it, that he can immediately start talking more to the middle of the electorate. He doesn't have to worry about the rabidly anti-vax base, whereas I think DeSantis still does. If he wants to knock off Trump, he's got to go after that base. And so really different political styles at work there. But the bottom line, Kieran, is that Trump still owns the Republican Party. If the Republicans win in November, as I think they will, at least one house of the US Congress, the House of Representatives, it will be a vindication of having gone all the way with Trump. And I think will really embolden Trump to continue on the trajectory he's on, and that is more likely than not a run at the presidency in 2024.